my dear student. My name is Meera and I am your new teacher for biology. So my name spelled as Meera, N-E-E-R-A. And the topic that we are going to discuss today is unit number 1, diversity of living organism, and the chapter is the living world. This unit carries 7 marks in your exam. So though it is not a very big mark, but then it is considered to be one of the important chapter. So before we go further, I would like you to have a knowledge regarding life that we have learned in our junior classes. So in our junior classes we have learned about living and non-living. So in junior classes we have learned that living organism or living thing are those things which can move around and which need food and which undergo the process of respiration, which shows excretion. All those are the character of living, and the opposite of them is considered as non-living. But as we go up higher, since you are already in standard 11, we have to know what are the basic character of living organism. So the subject itself, biology, means bio means living. So the study of living is biology. So today we are going to discuss what biology is actually about, what are the characters of living thing, and what are all features shown by the living thing is a defining character. Alright? So let's have a brief introduction of the chapter. In the introduction, I would like to give you a refresher why we need to study the living world. See, in our surrounding we see various types of living organisms. There are variety of forms. For example, you can see living organisms like animal, cow, dogs, cat, and you also see living organisms like human being. And there are also living organisms like lion, tiger, elephant, which are mostly present in a forest or a zoo or a wildlife sanctuary. And then you also have organisms like plants, animals. When you go to your kitchen garden, you can see a variety of living organisms, including insects, microorganisms, and you also see worms, the earthworm, which are present on the soil. And you can also see different types of fungi which grows on the bark of the tree, and different variety of disease-causing fungi and disease-causing microorganisms, bacteria. So there are many varieties of life form present on the earth. Therefore, it is very important for us to have a clear idea of how many life forms are present in this planet Earth. See, we cannot study each and every detail of every organism because there are billions of organisms living on the Earth. So therefore, what do? We tend to divide them into categories. We tend to divide them on their similar character, and after dividing them into similar character, we try to study them. So it becomes more easy and more understandable to all of us. Therefore, the study of living world is important because all the life forms, a variety of life forms that we see in our day-to-day life are more or less, we form some sort of correlation between us. So we are always related with all those organisms. Either they can be harmful or they can be useful to us. However, we always have a relationship. So to understand the relationship between us and the environment and all those life forms, we have to study the living world. So, so let's go further. Right? So let's talk about the living and the about non-living thing and the living thing. That was, if you have learned it in a very sincere way, it will be very easy for you to understand this chapter. So when I say living thing, there will be certain basic character that is shown by living thing. So we call that as the characteristic of life. The characteristic of life. So when I say the characteristic of life, then it will include all those features that is used for defining, that is used for the definition, for defining a life form. So the characteristic of life means all the features for defining a life form. The first and the foremost important type of characteristic or the character of life form is nothing but growth. Right. So when I say growth, there develops a question in our mind. Yes, growth. We all know growth means when there is increase in the size. Right? So when I say growth, then what comes in our mind is nothing but increase in the size. Increase in the size, shape, or the length or the height of an organism. So when I say growth, it means nothing but the increase in size. Obviously, there will be a differentiation between the growth in animals and the growth in plant, as well as growth between living and non-living. So therefore, let's discuss growth as a whole. So when I say growth, when we look growth in terms of living organism, we see that growth occurs in a proportional way. So let's take an example. Like 2 to 3 years back, when you are in standard 6, the size of your shoe is, like, for example, let's take you are wearing button number 4, but now you are in standard 11. What you are wearing? You are wearing number 9. So there is increase in the size of the length of your foot. So therefore, this is nothing but growth. However, in case of animal, growth is localized and it does not occur throughout the body. See, only your nose does not grow, your whole body grow, and only your foot does not grow, only your fingers does not grow, but all your body parts grow in a proportionate way, and it is also limited. Alright, growth does not occur throughout our life in animals. In animal, growth is limited and growth is also proportional. See, overall our body grow, and not only some part, only your hand become very elongated. It's not like that. Growth in living organisms, especially animal, is proportional and it is limited. However, growth in case of plant is confined to certain area. Let's take an example. The apical portion of plant body. The apical portion of plant body, if you remember clearly in your standard 9, you have learned about meristematic tissues present in the root tip and also at the apex or the shoot tip of a plant. So the apical portion of the plant body show continuous growth. The cells keep on dividing itself, and they are continuously dividing, and they are termed as meristem. And if you remember clearly, then I will know what meristem is. So I will not go into the detail of what meristem is. Right? So therefore, in case of plant, the certain they tends to grow. However, other part of the plant, they remain as it is. So there is no growth in other part of the plant. And this growth, in case of plant, they occur throughout their life until they become dead. Okay, until they die. The growth in case of the apical portion of the plant, it is continuous and it is present throughout their life. Right? So this is the basic difference between growth when we talk about growth in case of plants and in case of animal. Going further into growth, we can see that growth can be in case of unicellular. Growth can be growth can be increased in size of the cell or growth can be increased in the size of the cell and growth can be increased in the number of cells. So growth can happen in an organism. Either it can be increased in the size of the cell becoming bigger, or either it can be increased in the number of cells. So we see that in amoeba, for example, amoeba is a unicellular organism. In amoeba, what happens? The cell divide into two, right? So that is increase in the number of cells. That is also a growth. And in case of like cells becoming bigger, for example, cells present in the nerve cells, they are big in size. That is also an increase in the size of the cell, and that is also an example of growth. So growth as a whole is a defining character for life form. However, there is a catch point. If we ever visit a desert, we can see there are sand dunes. Sand dunes are nothing but hill-like deposition of sand present in the desert. So in sand dunes, what you can see that due to the change in the weather condition in the desert, the sand dune sometimes become big, sometimes becomes small. So this sand dune, they keep on increasing. You can see that there is an increase in the size of them. So in desert area, when you visit desert place, when you have a look at desert area, you can see that sand dune, there is the size of the sand dune keep on increasing. These sand dunes are an example of non-living thing. They are not living thing, though they so increase in the size. Because in case of sand dune, the increase in size is due to deposition on the surface of the sand dune. So the increase in size is due to external deposition of extra sand on them. But in case of living organism, growth is internal. Growth happens internally. So the basically when we talk about the growth in in living and non-living, we can say that growth in living organism is due to the growth in the internal environment, inside, which occur internally from inside. Growth occurs in living organism, but in case of non-living organism, sometimes that growth is just externally. So just might be deposition of some extra sand. You can also see some mountains becoming taller day by day. year by year, decades by decade. That is simply due to the addition of some soils, rocks, or any other materials present on the earth crust. They are added on the external surface. So that's the external increase in size, and we cannot consider that growth to the growth that is shown by the living organism. So growth as a whole cannot be a true defining character of a living organism. And growth as a whole, when we talk about living organism, we have to consider growth as growth that occurs from inside. So internal growth is the growth that we will talk about in case of living organism, and in case of non-living organism, that growth is external growth, which can be simply by addition of substance on the outer surface. So we are not considering that growth. The growth that we are considering in living organism is entirely internal in nature. And so what is the catch point when you talk about the character of living organism or the characteristic of life? Well, the first point, growth. In living organism is internal, number 1 point. Number 2 point, growth is limited. Growth does not occur throughout our life. In case of animal and in plant, it occurs throughout life. Growth occurs proportionally, like it occurs throughout the body. It's not that some part is growing and some part is not growing. So growth is internal in nature. In case of living organism, growth is limited, and growth is proportional, or it is proportional in living organism. And we cannot define, or we cannot say anything that grow as a living organism. So growth has to be very specific. When we talk growth as a character of a living organism, it has to be very specific and it has to be well defined. Alright, so this is about the first character or the characteristic of life forms. And the next characteristic of life form is, number 2 is reproduction. Since we are studying science, since our we have EVS in our classes, and from standard 6 onward we are studying science, we all know what reproduction is. And I will not be going further into details of reproduction, just a brief introduction regarding reproduction. So reproduction is the process by which an organism produces new offspring. So new offspring are produced by already existing organism. This reproduction is one of the basic characteristic of life, and this reproduction is seen only on living organism. So reproduction is giving birth to young one. There are 2 methods of reproduction that we have learned in our lower classes. They are asexual reproduction and another is sexual reproduction. So this asexual reproduction is seen in many plants and in lower organisms. Alright, and in case of sexual reproduction, which is a highly developed one, you can see sexual reproduction in higher plants, animals, multicellular, most of them. Alright, so in sexual reproduction, only a single parent is involved in the process of reproduction. So a single parent will divide and results in the formation of new daughter or new individuals. Alright. However, in case of sexual reproduction, we can see that 2 partners, a male and a female, is required for the process of reproduction. The male will produce male gametes, the female will produce female gametes. Male and female gametes, there will be fusion resulting in the formation of a new individual. So in case of sexual reproduction is occurs only when there is fusion of male gametes and the female gamete. This fusion is called fertilization. So sexual reproduction are shown by organism including us human. You have seen that human will give birth to human baby. They will look like human only, and more or less they will be more similar or more identical to their parents. Cow, dog, cat, elephant, lion, they also give birth to elephant and lion. And you will not see any cow giving birth to a dog. So the reproduction as well as sexual reproduction is concerned, it carries on in such a way that the individual or the parent will produce identical offspring. So the result of sexual reproduction is identical offspring. Let's come back to the unusual form of reproduction that is seen in plants and animals. We call it as asexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, only a single parent is involved in the reproduction. So only a single parent is involved in the reproduction or in the production of new offspring. Sexual reproduction are many types. In unicellular organisms like amoeba, the sexual reproduction we see is called the binary fission. In amoeba, the cell division itself is the reproduction. So asexual reproduction in amoeba, we don't need this, so let's rub it off. I don't need this. Amoeba binary fission is nothing but, we all know this is amoeba. Amoeba has an irregular structure. It does not have a definite structure. The cell membrane is directly in contact with the external environment. This is binary fission. Binary fission in amoeba is nothing but a cell division. The parent cell, the single cell, simply undergo cell division, give rise to two daughter cells. So this is binary fission in amoeba, and this binary fission represents asexual reproduction in amoeba. So these are the two daughter cells, and the cell division itself. Cell division itself is the reproduction process. And other type of reproduction that we see in lower organisms are fragmentation, regeneration. These are all type of sexual reproduction that we have seen in lower organism, and that we have already learned in standard 9 and 10. So we don't need to go further. But there is a special mentioning of reproduction in Hydra. In Hydra, asexual reproduction is by budding. Okay. In case of Hydra, This is a typical cell structure of Hydra. It has tentacles. So, in Hydra, a bud is formed. Okay, and in the next phase, the bud gets detached, and they are able to develop into a single or new individual by itself. So this is budding in Hydra. Budding is also seen in the very common fungi called the yeast, which is one of the important microorganisms involved in alcohol formation. We also use yeast in certain preparation of bakery product, right? So yeast is one of the important fungi. They are like, you can say, this microorganism is a friend to us, because with the help of yeast we are able to produce many type of juice, many type of beverage, many type of bakery product, cake, pastry, etc. So this is asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction in single cell organism and in multicellular organism, it's very simple. Just a cell division is representing reproduction. Just the formation of bud in both Hydra and yeast represent reproduction. And there is another type of reproduction, that is asexual reproduction, seen in plant. We call that as vegetative propagation. This vegetative propagation is one of the methods that is employed in horticulture. We do grafting, we do layering, right? And we try to develop new plant from the old plant without undergoing the process of fertilization. We cut, in case of rose, we cut stem, and then you can put some manure, you can put cow dung in the stem, and then you can grow it into another plant. So that is vegetative propagation. In vegetative propagation, you know, for example, in strawberry, what you do? Strawberry is a creeper. It has a structure called stelon. So this is the plant body. These are the roots. There is a structure called stelon. The spelling is S-T-O-L-O-N, stelon. This stelon, they can give rise to new strawberry plant. If you take this one and grow in another soil, grow in a different place, this stelon can give birth to new plant. Another example is a very typical example of a succulent plant called the Bryophyllum. The Bryophyllum has small buds coming out from the margin of the leaf. Alright? When you detach this bud and when you place this on other place, at other place, suitable place, they can grow into a new Bryophyllum plant. So this is vegetative propagation that you see in plant. This is also asexual method of reproduction. The parents and the offspring will be identical to each other. But reproduction cannot be defined as a true capacity or true defining character of living thing. Why? Because there are some exceptions, like, you know, we have seen human couple, they are not able to give birth, alright, and there are few organisms like starfish, they are not able to undergo either asexual or sexual method of reproduction. So reproduction cannot be a true defining character of living thing. You cannot cannot do reproduction. Reproduction all does not mean that all living organisms should reproduce, right? By saying so, it means that all living organisms should reproduce. I don't mean to say that all living organisms should be able to reproduce. There are some exceptions. There are some which cannot reproduce, but they are living things. So there are few exceptions in case of living organism, though they are not able to reproduce, but they are still considered as living organism. And going further, there are few microorganisms or few organisms like fungi. We all know how fungi reproduce. Fungi reproduce by spore formation. So this is also another method of asexual reproduction. Alright. So it is not, reproduction is not a necessity for an organism. Organism can either reproduce, or there are few which cannot reproduce, but they still are considered as living. Alright, so we are through with reproduction. The second character defining a living thing or living organism. Next is metabolism. So, before we go further into the definition of metabolism, I would like you to remember your standard 10 chapter on life processes. Life processes include the process like nutrition, digestion, respiration, excretion, control and coordination. So this all process are said to be the basic criteria to define a living organism, right? So when they say life process, it means that organism tends to show these processes in order to be living. So we see that in case of nutrition, we take in complex food. I will be talking about holozoic type of nutrition. In holozoic nutrition, we take the complex food, and then after the complex food is ingested, it reaches the stomach, wherein it is digested into simple molecules, and this simple molecule is assimilated. It got absorbed in our blood and it is sent to different part of our body. So what is this basically happening here? In here, during this process, certain chemical reactions are occurring, wherein the complex food is digested into simple molecule with the help of various enzymes involved in the digestion. To name a few, we have amylase, we have pepsinogens for proteins, and we have fat digesting enzyme as well. So these certain enzymes are the one which is making possible for chemical reaction in our body to occur. So since this chemical reaction occurs in the living, we call it as biochemical reaction. So this biochemical reaction is very important. Why? Because the energy to do work, to sleep, even to walk, even to read book, even to go and fetch a bucket of water are required energy, and this energy is obtained from the digestion of the complex food. And when these food materials becomes the simple molecule, they got integrated in our cells, and there are certain cell organelles in our cells that convert that convert this molecule into energy. What is the energy? Energy currency in our body? Nothing but the ATP. What is ATP stand for? ATP stand for adenosine triphosphate. So this is the energy currency in our body. Energy currency in our body is produced by a process called respiration, or more precisely the cellular respiration or aerobic respiration. So the whole process of digestion coming to respiration and the removal of unwanted material from our body, that is excretion, are all related. They occurs in a simultaneous manner in our body. So the chemical reaction that is occurring in our body, the biochemical reaction that is occurring in our body occurs in a simultaneous way, and all of them are dependent on each other. So all the chemical reaction in our body, in the body of a living organism, are dependent upon one another. And why do we need this chemical reaction? We need this chemical reaction to obtain energy to do work, energy to do certain functions of our body. So this chemical reaction in the organism is self-sustaining. That is, they take place inside our body. They are a set of self-sustaining chemical reaction. And in both unicellular as well as multicellular organism, these chemical reactions are more or less similar. Alright, so therefore, when we say metabolism is the sum total of all the chemical reactions that occur inside a living system. So metabolism is nothing but the sum total of all chemical reaction that occurs within a living system. So the system can be a living organism, it can be a multicellular, the living organism can be a multicellular, or the living organism can be a unicellular. Alright, so this is about metabolism. Metabolism is nothing but the sum total of all the chemical reaction that occurs within a living system. The living system can be unicellular or multicellular. Right, so metabolism, when we talk about chemical reaction, the biochemical reaction is of two types. One is anabolism, another is catabolism. When I say anabolism means when when we use simple molecules to convert into complex form. So anabolism is nothing but the production of complex So when I say anabolism means transformation of energy by converting chemicals and energy into cellular component. So when we use energy and chemicals to form cellular component, then we call it as anabolism. Alright, and this anabolism example will be photosynthesis. During photosynthesis, we use light energy and we use certain chemicals like carbon dioxide and and water to form a complex structure called glucose. And another type of metabolism is catabolism. This catabolism is nothing but decomposing of organic matters. So the decomposing of organic matters is catabolism, and transformation of energy and chemicals by converting it into cellular component is anabolism. So there are two types of metabolism occurring in living system. They are anabolism and catabolism. When I say metabolism, then it is a sum total of all the chemical reaction. So this is the third type of characteristic of living organism. The living organism, if we have to define a living organism or an organism have to be living, it has to have metabolism. It has to undergo metabolism. But when we talk about in vitro means inside a test tube, in a lab, in a laboratory, inside a test tube. If we take out this chemical reaction and if we make them to undergo that reaction, we will not call it as a living organism, but we will call it as a living chemical reaction that occurs in vitro. Alright, so that is about in vitro. And thank you class, we will continue next time.